One of the major fights that you may have heard in regarding to elections is the fight for 15. The fight for 15, the ability to clothe oneself, feed oneself, put roof over head for oneself. And during that debate about how best to do that, there have been some pushback to the $15 hour minimum wage. Now, those like myself believe if you increase the pay for employees, you increase the livelihoods, not just the livelihoods of those people, but also their families. And you, in turn, help the economy because people who have money who are from meager existence, from living paycheck to paycheck or what have you, guess what they do when they get their $15 minimum wage? Come on now, you rocket scientists out there. It doesn't require that. When working people get more money, they spend money because there's always stuff that needs to be done. Where are these people that don't understand this concept? They don't stash your money in the Cayman Islands. Working people put new tires on the car. They maybe go out and eat a meal out every once in a while. And lo and behold, if you've really been making only $7.25 an hour, like some people, you're able just to buy a little bit more cheese to go on that bread. Maybe some butter. Some people don't live in the reality that we live in. They don't understand people that live paycheck to paycheck or people that live their couch surf, for instance, because they don't make enough money to afford their own. We have people in America working 2 jobs, barely able to live indoors or to be a roommate to someone living indoors. Recently was a segment on Fox News where they talked about this. And guys, look, this is important to know. This segment's going to be important because this will give you the requisite talking points to fend back the people who make this argument.
Okay, Austin wants to talk about the current McDonald's CEO, Kemzinski. He's noting that artificial intelligence technology has 85% accuracy with filling orders, with workers having to step in for approximately 1 in 5 orders. It's going to be a big leap, he says, to go from 10 restaurants to 14,000 restaurants. But there is no doubt they are working in that direction, Art.
Yeah, for those people, Sandra, who are coming into the labor force brand fresh, not old-timers who've been around for a while, the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised, those with less education, young people who haven't had the job experience, these people aren't worth $15 an hour in most cases. And so therefore, when you have a $15 an hour minimum wage, they don't get that first job. They don't get the requisite skills to earn above the minimum wage. And after a few years, they become unemployable. And after becoming unemployable, they become hostile. And that what you'll find happening is this technology has created an underclass of people who are really just bid out of the labor market and will remain out of the labor market for most of their lives. And this, I think, is just a tragedy. I love the technology, but the technology is replacing the jobs for these people. And it's a killer. It's a killer for just the people who need the help the most.
Wow, that was a lot of assertions made by the bigot over there. That bigot made a lot of assertions about people, didn't he? 2 minutes of fun for bigots is what you just witnessed. Ironically, there are some people on YouTube and some people in independent media who are supporting this notion that there are people who just aren't worth $15 an hour. Who are these people that aren't worth $15 an hour? Hey, he just let us know. His name is Art Laffer. He is Art Laffer he was a Reagan administration guy, so he's old, and he's old and bigoted. And he's old and bigoted and has no respect for the blacks, the Lats, poor people at all, or young people. See, he forgot the primary thing that drives wages, and that is market value. Here's the thing. What people are worth is what it takes to get another one with the same ability, with the same skills. Once you raise the minimum wage, you can't deny employment because you still need employees. That's the beauty of minimum wage. Companies typically don't go out of their way to raise wages. Companies typically try to get the best quality service or the best performance for the least amount of money. This is why people will pay you $7.25 an hour, because they're allowed to. There are companies that would pay you $2 an hour if they could. You don't believe me? Check the waitress industry. Check hospitality industry. where people live off tips and are paid $1 an hour. This is all legal. Hasn't changed since, the 70s or something? There are people believing these talking points. Also, another fallacy that he promoted here as well is that only young people will be impacted by this. Only young people are going to suffer from having to make more money. Oh no, young people make more money. Here's the thing, there will always be employers who will make decisions based on their bottom line. But if all the employees, if the entire employee pool are full of people, if the minimum wage is higher for everyone gets a raise. Because you can't pay the person who's been doing it 10 years less than the person or the same as the person who's been doing it 2 minutes. And here's another thing that people don't want to admit. Maybe, just maybe, if you have a job opening but you can't afford to pay a higher minimum wage, maybe you don't need to have a job opening. What you need to do is do that job yourself. That's how it works, because see, there's also another fallacy. I got a lot of fallacies here to destroy with this little short clip from the Fox News guy. Another thing is a lot of people who work these jobs, these fast food jobs, I think he's referring to, brother, those people pay for their families' rent, they pay utilities. These people are not just spending money for the weekends. What Andy Griffith show did this mofo grow up watching? I just said it, the Andy Griffith show. Look, man, I don't know what time warp you're stuck in, Mr. Lafler, but those people, young people, old people, all types of people work fast food jobs. All types of people make minimum wage jobs, work minimum wage jobs. And those people have this thing called children. Lord, look, it's always amazing how these conservatives don't ponder the other side of the equation. What about the family who dad and mom work the minimum wage jobs because that's all they can find? But now if the minimum wage gets raised, they're able to provide a better quality of living for their children so that the children can live better lives and so their children can have more access to resources. What about the benefits of a society that actually pays workers more money? What about that? None of that is even considered in this clip. Instead, you want to talk to me about robotics. Well, you know what? If any industry or any company wants to incorporate robotics into their working base and eliminate humans, they have a right to do so, I guess. Unless what? Unless we rally around and push back on the use of robots. The same way you're pushing back on the use of the raising of the minimum wage, why not join working people and push back on the usage of robots? And isn't even the idea of replacing workers, human beings, for no other reason than, hey, I can save a couple of bucks, prove that they don't value human capital, that they don't value people. And you would think value of human beings would be something conservatives supported. But instead, it's the same old talking points that if you give people money, and then once again, and at the very end, as you hear the last and probably the most disgusting of the BS he threw against the wall was, these people can't get jobs now because they've been priced out of the market because they're not worth $15 an hour, and they become disgruntled, and their lives are spent being pissed off or whatever he said, insinuating that these people turn to crime. Art Lafler, when was the last time you spent any amount of time at all with actual working or poor people? You've been living high on the hog since the 80s. And you want to talk to us about what you extensively have knowledge of with working people who get frustrated because they can't make it in the job market. And even if that was to exist, which I'm not willing to equivocate to you, but even if that was the case, why not build programs? Why not build programs that help those people? Why not be proactive in conquering or dealing with that issue? See, their way of dealing with these issues that they say may or may not happen is to lower your wages. We all know you're doing that because you want to support the corporations. You want to support the wealthy and the corporations against the best interests of the people. If raising the minimum wage creates any type of outcomes or effects that are negative, well, that's another issue to be addressed. And as a country that's progressive, you would think we'd have the bandwidth now to deal with those issues. So if people need to be retrained, that's one thing. If people need further assistance, that's another thing. If companies, struggling small businesses, can't afford to pay the minimum wage, that's another issue that we need to look at as far as our local state representatives. Why can't we start working on legislation that deals with issues like we're in the 21st century instead of the 20th century? Why can't we move forward? Because they're getting paid not to move forward. That's where their bread is buttered. The bread is buttered by special interest groups, lobbyists, and the like. And keeping a job and being able to go on Fox News and tell poor people you deserve to be poor because you don't have the requisite skills. You notice he won't bring up racism or any other discriminatory practices that keeps people at the bottom. And he left out my favorite, those people whose jobs have left or been automated out of existence, not just because they got a minimum wage increase, but because the company wanted to move the jobs to some other place for an even lower wage than that. Those people deserve a fair wage that's comparable with living. We need people to be able to live. See, unbeknownst to Art Lafleur, I know a few things about people living struggling. I lived underneath the poverty line. I lived in situations where we didn't know where our next meal was coming sometimes. We weren't able to just go and buy goods or buy things that we needed, essential things. We struggled. We were always below minimum. We were always below middle class, lower class. That's how I grew up. And I know a little thing about people who turn to crime. And I'll tell you this, I never met anybody ever in my life who wanted to become a criminal just to do it for fun. I never knew anyone in my time as a young man growing up, living on my own since I was 16 years old, that I mean anyone who wanted to do anything illegal who had other options. And listening to this guy, Art Lafleur, he doesn't want to give them options that actually keep them living out of the streets, able to afford a one-bedroom. He'd rather for them to continue to live on the streets and have to turn to the streets in order to feed themselves and their families. So put all that in perspective next time you hear one of these talking heads telling you about the $15 minimum wage. People that never work for $15 a minimum wage or $7 or $8 or whatever, they're the last people that should be able to talk about the issue. Selling us doomsday scenarios for actually giving people the ability to clothe and feed themselves. And $15 in the minimum wage is the ceiling, is the floor, not the ceiling. That's right. $15 minimum wage is the floor, not the ceiling. We need to go much higher. And if we kept up with inflation and stopped listening to lobbyists, it would be at least $22. But you won't hear that on Fox News. All these numbskulls, conservative jackasses, blowhards, and independent media preaching conservative dribble. There's some sellouts. You know that, right? There's some sellouts.